All right, let me just get my notes up here really quickly. Oh, they're right here. All right, so today we're going to be talking about The One Thing by Gary Keller and also with Jay Papasan. Nobody really talks about him, but yeah, Gary Keller and Jay Papasan wrote The One Thing. It's a pretty good book. If you haven't given it a read, I highly suggest you do. It covers a lot of success principles. And I'm just going to go over a few key takeaways I got from this book. So the one thing, as its name suggests, is about how you have to focus in on one thing if you want to become successful, right? Gary, in his book, he argues a lot about how a lot of people today, myself included, most definitely, we tend to create these things called to-do lists that have um, many objectives on the list that we have to get done. So it could be things like I have to go to the grocery store, I have to work out, I have to do X, Y, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole list of like 30 things. He says if you really want to be successful, you have to eliminate this list of 30 objectives you have to get done and put it down to one thing, right? And there's a whole bunch of reasons for why you want to do this. First of all, he says if you're trying to go somewhere and you have a sort of list that takes you everywhere at the same time, imagine you're right here, right? And you have a list that's taking you everywhere. It's going up, down, left, right. It's going all in a circle. In the end, you're not really going anywhere. You're staying right where you are. But if you have one purpose, one thing that you have to do, you're going to have that extreme focus to go right to where you need to go. And that's what he argues for why having only one sole goal, purpose, etc., is the reason or a better alternative to having a to-do list full of a whole host of things. He also says when you choose your one thing to make it really big and specific. This is sort of the idea of shoot for the moon. If you miss, you hit the stars. If it's big and specific, it's more likely you're going to do more to get it, and you're going to know what you're actually going towards, right? So what most people do, he says in the book, is that we do small goals that are vague, which it's the two worst things that you can do, right? If your goal is vague, then anything can technically achieve your goal. So an example of a vague goal might be, I'm going to make more money, right? And then a small goal might be, I'm going to increase my sales by 5%, right? That's a little bit more specific, but yeah, it's still small, right? Or the big goal would be, I'm going to increase my sales by 50%. And in a very specific goal would be, I'm going to increase my sales by 50% by this time, and I'm going to do it by doing X, Y, Z, right? It's a lot more specific. It's a big goal, and you know where you're going. So in his book, Gary actually outlines a very good question that we can ask ourselves in times where we don't know what to do. And the question goes, just let me pull it up here, or I think I can remember. It's, what is the one thing that I can do right now that would make everything else unnecessary or 10 times easier, right? What is the one thing, right? You got to focus in on one thing that makes everything else, right? If I do this thing, everything else will become irrelevant or 10 times easier. And you can just, if you find the answer to that question, you can just see how that is the only thing you really should be doing. And he also relates this to something called the Pareto principle. A little off topic here, but I really want to throw this in here. And it's kind of comes from the fact that not everything that you do will produce as much as not everything that you do will produce as much results. And I worded that terribly, but what I mean by that is some things that you do will produce 90% of your results. And it's called the 80-20 rule, but it can be 10-90, 10-50 rule, where 10% of the things that you do will produce 50% of the results, right? So you got to find what that 10%, that 20% is that's going to create that big amount of results. The next thing Gary covers in his book is how you need a purpose, right? And what a purpose he argues where it comes from is where it's the intersection between what you enjoy doing and the end result that you want, right? If you can find the link between what you enjoy doing and an end outcome that you're very passionate about, you're going to have a purpose in your life. And don't try to overthink this too much. Just try to make sure you find one, because when you have a purpose, your one thing becomes a whole lot easier to figure out what it is. All right, and then once you have a purpose, you can start having priorities, right? Because if your purpose, let's say, is that let's say, for example, your purpose is you love working out and you want to teach others to avoid becoming obese and you want to help them become healthier, right? Right? Let me get some water here, but excuse me. If that's your purpose, all right, your priorities become pretty simple. You know what you have to do. You're not going to be eating Doritos. Your priorities are going to be much more likely to work out, to show other people to work out, to find the best way to work out, to find the best way to teach other people to work out, right? Your priorities are in order now. And that comes from having a purpose. And then so now that you have purpose, you have priorities, and then from that you're going to be able to become productive, right? And that just comes from doing the work and doing what needs to be done, and actually moving towards your one thing. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got from this book. I mean, there's a lot more in it. I mean, that was just what I could remember. He talks about a lot of myths, right? Lies that we hear is such as like everything matters equally, right? We talked about the Pareto principle. Some things produce most of the results. Like a small proportion, excuse me, produces more than half the results. So obviously not all things that matter equally. Multitasking is a lie. Don't multitask. In the book, he talks about the science of it. Trust me, it's just a lie. Don't multitask. Willpower is always on will call. That's a fallacy. He talks about it in the book. Again, the science that backs it up, but basically that, I mean, you can just tell if you've ever been on a diet that after a while you kind of lose the willpower to stay on the diet, and he says instead make it so that you do all the important things at the beginning, so that you use up all your willpower on the important things at the start and don't waste it on things such as don't leave it to the end of the day when you have no willpower. Be a better way to put it. And another myth is big is bad. That's, just as people that want to be comfortable living the small life, he argues. And the 3 commitments: you got to commit to mastery, right? Great results come from mastery. You got to commit to doing things the right way. Don't just do things your way. Do things the right way. Look up what is the best way and how to do them. And that's about it. There's some other good chapters in this book. I'm not going to cover them just because I don't particularly remember them. So, yeah. Anyways, that's the one thing. I hope you picked up a thing or two, and I hope I did too. And as always, have a good day.